Hey everybody, it's Andrew, and real quick, before we get into this new episode, completely different format, I think you guys are really going to love it. That's all I'm going to say about that. But before we get into that, I really want you guys to check out whatpods.com. It's a really cool website that was founded by two lawyers that had an obsession for podcasts. And basically, they created this site because they were really sick and tired of trying to find podcasts that they liked because it was a really difficult process. So they created this really neat site that made that process a lot easier. So if you like shows, podcasts like Indie Game Movement, then I would highly recommend you guys going there, checking it out, and seeing if there's other shows you like. Part of the reason why I'm mentioning them as well is because they reached out to me in terms of, hey, would you, consider being listed on our site? And I think it would be a great way to get some more exposure, to share the show with other people. And as part of that process, they asked us if we could just give a quick shout out to you guys about What Pods, and also so you can go and endorse a show. We have a page there. You can go there and endorse Indie Game Movement, and it helps us out quite a bit. And not only that, it's just a really awesome site to check out. If you like podcasts, you're really going to like this site too, because it makes it easier to find other shows that you guys like. Speaking of shows you like, we really hope that you are enjoying Indie Game Movement. Mustapha and I are working really hard putting these shows together and trying to find different ways to doing that. And we'd love to hear your feedback on how that's going, whether you drop us a line directly, or if you just leave a review on wherever you're listening to the show. That would mean the world to us, but it would help us out a lot too. So if you have the time available, we would really appreciate it if you could go and leave us a review on what you think. And if you're too busy and you can't, no worries. We're just glad that you're coming back and listening to the show. All right, so I'm not going to talk anymore. Let's just get right into the show, and I hope you guys enjoy it. It's a really fun one. All right, take care.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. This is episode 111, and I'm Andrew Pappas, one of your hosts today, because I also have Mustapha Price with me, who's our producer. Mustapha, how's it going?
Going great. Thanks for asking, Andrew. Super excited to be back here at PAX East another year.
Yeah, and that's right. You heard him correctly. We are on the floor of PAX East right now, and we decided we're going to change things up a bit. So this is going to be a very different episode compared to what you're used to, because we're going to be going around and talking to a lot of indie devs about their game. And Mustapha, what exactly are we going to be talking to them about?
Yeah, so essentially we're going to be doing a roundup between the Indie Mega booth, the PAX Rising booth, connecting with a bunch of independent developers from all over the country and figuring out some of their strategy for marketing, some challenges they've encountered, and how they've overcome those challenges.
Yeah, so that's going to be some really exciting stuff that we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. All right, and so we're back, and we're going to kick off this roundup with Richard Rouse, who's here on the showroom floor. Richard, what's going on, and what are you showcasing at PAX?
Yeah, we're showing the Church in the Darkness here. We've been at a few PAX East before, but this is our last one before shipping.
Nice. All right, so what is Church in the Darkness about, though, real quick?
Yeah, so it's set inside a religious cult in the 1970s, which you are infiltrating to try to find your nephew Alex. He's a member of the group, but they've moved down to South America. You don't know what's going on. You're kind of worried. His mom's worried. So you're going in. You've got some ex-law enforcement backgrounds. You're just trying to sneak in, find him, see if he's okay or not.
Oh, sweet. So it sounds like it could be pretty intense.
Yeah. They're all heavily armed in there, so they don't like trespassers. So your job is mostly to avoid conflict, though you can also pick up the gun and shoot back if you want.
Sweet. All right. So let's get into the meat of our discussion, which is simply, what have been some of your biggest marketing challenges? And then a follow-up to that is, how have you been overcoming them?
Yeah, I mean, I found that the biggest challenge is there's just so many games these days, right?
Yeah.
And good games too, right? There's a lot of bad games, but there's also a lot of good games. So just trying to stand apart from that. We're lucky that our concept is very unique. We're not doing something that anyone else is doing, really, so that helps a lot. I think picking something that can really stand out. Like, we're both, doing the 70s cult thing. We've also got procedural generation in our narrative. We've also got, a different top-down type of gameplay than most games are doing these days. So we look pretty different. We play pretty different, and people remark on that. So I think that's probably the biggest thing in our favor. But certainly also coming to shows like PAX helps. Like, if you have a good-looking booth, we put a lot of work into the booth here.
Yeah,
just
totally.
make it look different. Plants, make it feel like a jungle a little bit. Props, it feel like the group. People notice stuff like that. That draws them into your booth. Whereas if you just have, like, the standard setup that everybody has, people might just pass by.
Cool. So basically, just if we were to boil it down to one thing, it's just doing everything you can stand out, whether it's from a game design and build perspective all the way down to your booth, just really standing out in front of everybody.
Yeah, I think that's the number one thing. I'm lucky, too, that I'm working with a publisher now called Fellow Traveler. They're great, so I can focus on the game. They can focus on business relationships, marketing stuff, positioning. And I think it really helps to have someone else doing that for you, because I like to say that you're sort of the worst person to sell your own game. You're sort of the best person, too, right? You're passionate about it, you love it, but you also don't have good perspective on what's most interesting about it, maybe, right? You might think but then if you bring in someone else's opinion, they'll say, well, actually, we think this is important, and then you can, talk with them and figure out how you're going to, present the game to people. But just having a different set of opinions, I think, helps a lot.
Awesome. Well, Richard, I know you have a lot of people playing your game right now, and you've got to probably get right back to it, but we really appreciate your time and sharing this with the community.
Cool. It was great. Always good to talk to you, sir.
All right, same here.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, everybody, and we're back, and here we have Mederick of The Inner Friend. And Mederick, how are things going at PAX, man?
Things are going great, man. It's always a very good time to be at the show. First day is almost over, and it's always great. We love talking to people and seeing them enjoying the game.
Awesome. So, The Inner Friend, what exactly is it about? It looks pretty creepy. I had a chance to play it last year. It was great, but please tell our listeners a little bit more about it.
Well, The Inner Friend is a very special kind of game. Basically, it's a narrative game, an adventure game. It has puzzle mechanics and psychological horror aspects. You're basically diving into childhood fears and nightmares to retrieve a lost part of yourself.
Oh, wow.
And it's a narrative game without any text or dialogues, so you have to figure out by yourself what is happening. And every level features different puzzle mechanics, so you have to kind of relearn every time you get into a new level. And it's you have some pretty scary parts in the game as well.
Oh, cool. So in light of that, I can see how maybe communicating some of these mechanics or elements of the game can be kind of a challenge. And from a marketing perspective, what's been some of your challenges in light of this, and what are some solutions that you use to overcome that?
Well, it's been quite a challenge on the marketing side, because we planned to release in a timing that was way better than we actually ended up releasing the game on. We wanted to release the game during the summer, just past the big events, and we ended up releasing the game in September, one day before Spider-Man.
Okay.
Which was a very, very bad timing, but we had to. It was money questions and funding and stuff like that.
Right.
And as you said, since the game doesn't fit in one specific genre, marketing this game and making people understand that it's a mix of all those has been a real big challenge. I've ended up, like, the more shows you do, the more you learn how to pitch the game and how to make it as clear as possible for people who play it. And with a demo like that, for a narrative game, so just getting into the game without any context,
right,
is super weird for people, because they're like, okay, narrative game, but I don't get anything that's happening.
Right.
So what we've done is that we've given some backstory, of course, but we don't want to give too much, because we want to leave space for interpretation, because that's the whole goal. So it's just giving a quick introduction to the game. And then recently, actually, we're releasing for console this summer, and we've added a cutscene. So we've added something for the people who actually go deeper into the game and want to collect all the collectibles. A backstory, like a little cutscene that you unlock after finishing the game, so you can understand a little bit what's happening. But seriously, on the marketing side, just being able to make it as clear as possible, I ended up just ending by saying, you know what? It's the perfect game to replace a movie night. It's a short experience. It's an emotional experience. It's not for very hardcore gamers. It's pretty casual. You can finish it in like 2 hours and not restart the same level 50 times because you die. It's not made to be a big challenge. It's made to just have an emotional experience where you can dive into a story without having to spend 20 hours in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. So it sounds like overall, from all those challenges and everything, it was just simply kind of narrowing down, getting that that feedback from players and stuff, and just narrowing it down to a simple and concise message in which it has plenty of context and in which then the player can figure out the rest for themselves.
Exactly. Seriously, the more shows you do, the more you pitch.
Yep.
The more you learn what's the clearest way to pitch it. And it's a funny thing because from one gamer to the others, sometimes you have to change the pitch.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not as clear for some of them. And, after a while, you start saying a lot of weird stuff. I ended up in every show at least once. I'm like, yeah, it's a mix of a racing game with survival instincts. And people are like, what? And I'm just kidding, because you get tired after the 4 days of the show, so you start saying a lot of crap.
Fair enough. All right, well, hey, that's great. It seems like you guys had a really good day, and I'm sure you're going to have a really good PAX ahead of you, so keep up the good work.
Thank you, man. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see how the show goes.
All right. All right, and I am here with Bennett from Bomb Shelter Games. And Bennett, how's it going right now?
It's going great. We're here at PAX, as you mentioned, with Bomb Shelter Games. And Bomb Shelter Games, we're here showcasing our game Depths of Sanity, which is an underwater Metroidvania, and we're having a blast watching people play it. And it's just been awesome. We love PAX. We were here last year, and it's just a great time.
Wow. So, all right, tell us a little bit more, because I know people have this mindset in terms of what Metrovania looks like. They're pretty familiar with that term, but you said underwater, so how does that differ from the genre that people are most familiar with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, Metroidvania, at the end of the day, it's a pretty ubiquitous game genre. Everybody's making one, and they're super popular right now. They really all boil down to this idea of, like, platforming, though, right? You can't jump high enough to get to the thing. You can't jump far enough to get across the gap, but, like, so that's where we decided to mix it up. So we threw platforming out the window. You've got 360 degrees of motion, and you're piloting this submarine around the screen. It kind of plays like Asteroids, which we think is very unique to the Metroid genre in general, because usually Metroids play like Metroid or something else. Or like Castlevania, they've got that sword fighting aspect to it like Hollow Knight does. But no, we think that's really the separating factor for us. And it's presented a bunch of unique game design challenges as well to, basically, how do you make the player, how do you stop the player from moving forward, which is something that you do with gaps and heights in traditional Metroidvania. We use things like pitch black darkness and ocean currents and small crevasses that you can only get through with the diver to mix up that gameplay element. So we think those are the really kind of shining beacons in our game that make us unique in the Metroidvania space.
Cool. So then that brings up my next question, which is basically, in light of all that in the game, and not only that, we've been talking to a lot of different people here that are saying that, the market is just really crowded. So from a marketing standpoint, what are some of your challenges that you're facing in light of all that, but also how are you overcoming them?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's a game developer these days, it seems like.
Right.
It's crazy how much a lot of the other games that we're seeing here are games that we see at a bunch of the different conventions that we do, and that's really what it's come down to for us. It's been about just being present and hoping you get noticed is a really bad tactic, but it is part of the game. And really, everything that you do, that's where it starts, is getting out there with your game as soon as possible. Whether it's in pre-alpha, in alpha, or beta, or you're shipping right now, get it out there. Get to a convention floor and have people play it. Because once people play it, really, that's when it really connects with them. You can watch gameplay videos, you can read explanations online, but until they play it, they're not really going to know what makes it special. Now, that's like the bare bones basic stuff that we're doing.
Right.
Which really doesn't separate us from the crowd at all. So what we've been doing is a lot of, when we go to these festivals, we do all kinds of like crazy little things. We hand out fun little swag. We wear costumes.